This is the Sony A7Cii Mark II, and this camera has become my favorite everyday camera to shoot with. It might not be the most high-end, it doesn't have all the cutting-edge features, and it isn't the most expensive, but it does everything I need it to do. The photo and video coming from this camera are incredible, and best of all, it's lightweight and it's small. So if you're a photographer, videographer, or a hybrid shooter and you're looking for a brand new camera this year, today I'm gonna walk you through exactly what I love and maybe what I don't love so much about this camera so you can know if it's right for you. All right, let's first talk about the things I love about this camera. First on the list is the 33 megapixel full frame sensor. To think there is a 33 megapixel full frame sensor in this tiny little body, it's insane. I absolutely love being able to shoot incredible photos with such a tiny camera. I've been shooting a load of stuff right now here in the UAE with the A7Cii Mark II, and I've been loving the results I've been getting from it. Of course, it also has in-body image stabilisation, which is incredible to say the least. And my last favorite feature about this sensor, let me tell you, is this. The shutter curtain comes down over the top of the sensor, meaning I can take the body cap off, I can change lenses, and nothing is gonna touch my sensor. No dust, no sensor spots, nothing. I absolutely love this. All right, next up we have the size. Not only is this guy super small and incredibly feature-packed, but it's also super lightweight. I have been loving, and you know what? My back has been loving just carrying around this camera. About 6 months ago, I was shooting with the Canon R5C, which is a little bit of a bigger camera than this, and now just shooting with the A7Cii Mark II, whew, goodness me, my back to full health. I'm also loving all the dials we've got on this small body. We've got one up the front, we've got two on the top here, and then we've also got one at the back. This means this tiny camera has 4 dials. In comparison to the Sony ZV-E1, which I'm shooting this video on right now, it's only got 2, which is fine. It's more than usable. However, having 4 on such a compact body, absolute game changer. Now, speaking of the Sony ZV-E1 and what it unfortunately doesn't have, a viewfinder. I am shocked that they were able to squeeze a viewfinder on this camera, and while it might not be the fastest or the best viewfinder, it is still really nice to be able to just pop this up against your eye and be able to shoot. Cutting out all the light and just focusing on your frame is a very, very nice feature to have. I never thought I'd be praising a camera manufacturer for including a viewfinder, but here we are. Now, I'm also loving the color signs coming out of this camera. This is arguably my first Sony camera that I've ever taken photos on, so this is my only experience with it, but I was a little bit hesitant, especially when coming over from Canon to Sony, about what the colors would look like. The colors coming out of this camera for photos are amazing, and also the video colors look great as well. Also, a little bit of a side note, but the color customization with all the picture profiles that you can use on Sony cameras, incredible. I know that's not a feature specifically, made for the A7Cii Mark II, but if you're not absolutely loving the colors coming out of your camera, you can go in, create a custom picture profile, change them, and you're good to go. All right, and the last thing I want to cover on this list of things I love about this camera is that it is a great hybrid camera. We know that the 33 megapixel sensor inside of this camera takes amazing photos. So with the photo stuff out of the way, how does this go with shooting video? Well, I actually really like the video. It is downsampled from 7K, which means it's incredibly sharp when you're shooting 4K. The only downside to this though, however, is when you're shooting in 50 or 60 FPS, there is a 1.5 times crop. So that definitely is worth mentioning. It's not the end of the world, especially if you don't mind shooting a little tighter when you're shooting slow-mo. However, when you're shooting in 25, 24, or 30 frames per second, it's full frame, the 4K looks amazing, and I love this camera. It's kind of the perfect all-rounder camera, especially if you vlog, you take photos, and you want to shoot some cinematic stuff as well. All right, so with all the things I love about this camera, let's now cover some things that I don't love about this camera. And first on that list is not having a joystick to move my focus point around. I'm someone that uses one spot focus, right? Wherever I want to focus, I move the little point around, I get to where I want to focus, and I'm happy with that. But unfortunately, on the back of this camera, there is no joystick to do that. So I have to do that with the dial pad. It gets a little bit fiddly and definitely slows you down. It's not the end of the world. However, I would have loved to have seen a joystick on this camera. I guess they've got to keep some features for the A7 IV and the A7R5 and the A7R4 and all the other higher end cameras. They can't pack everything into a mid-range camera. Now, I spoke about the viewfinder and the things that I love about this camera. However, the delay from screen to viewfinder is a little bit long. It's not the end of the world once again, and all of the things I'm gonna cover in the things that I don't love about this camera, they're not the end of the world. They're not deal breakers. That's why I've got this camera in my hand, but it does slow you down when you're out in the field as well. Just going from shooting on the screen to popping this up against your eye, it takes maybe 3 to 4 seconds, at least from my experience. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. However, I do really appreciate that they did include a viewfinder, so I can't really complain here. The grip is also a little bit small. I don't mind the depth, and I definitely don't have the largest hands in the world. However, when I hold this camera, my pinky wants to fall off. I believe you can get a grip extension that comes with the A7Cii, but I'm not really interested in making this camera any bigger. All I have to do is adjust my grip a little bit and make sure this finger is always on the shutter button, and then I've got a pretty solid grip of this camera. All right, and last but not least on the list of shortcomings for the A7C Mark II is the one SD card slot. Look, I have probably left my SD card at home maybe a few more times than I'd like to admit after shooting with a camera that just has one SD card slot. Like I said, I was coming from Canon, I was shooting on the R6 and the R5C, which always had 2 card slots, which always seemed to save my ass when I left my SD card plugged into my computer. So it is a little bit of a shame that this camera only has one SD card slot. However, I guess it's just a solid reminder to make sure I'm always checking if I have my SD card in my camera before I go out to shoot, which probably should be done anyway, regardless of how many SD card slots you have. So anyway, that is gonna wrap up today's video. I just wanna preface everything I just said and tell you that I knew exactly what I was getting myself into when I got this camera. All right, so all of the shortcomings that I just listed, look, they are what they are. They're so manageable and easy to deal with. I'm not in any way disappointed with this camera whatsoever. If anything, I'm incredibly impressed and also a little surprised about how good this camera actually is. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you got a little bit of insight about the A7C Mark II today. If you did, let me know what it was in the comments down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.